Do you ever feel like you're living day by day without really moving forward? Every morning you wake up and ask yourself, who am I? Where do I want to go? How do I achieve what I want in life? But then you find yourself falling back into old habits, repetitive thoughts, and end the day without actually getting closer to any goals. Think about this. You are 25 to 30 years old, with the desire for success, but don't know where to start. Around you, there are people who seem to have everything: a stable career, a clear vision, and a path ahead. But what about you? You feel confused, pressured by the expectations of family, society, and yourself. How do you break old patterns, find a vision, and start building a future that you truly desire? In today's video, we will explore a special journey, a journey to understand the power of thought and how it shapes your future. These are not just dry theories, but real stories, valuable lessons from a memorable workshop where young people like you found the guiding light for their lives. If you have ever wondered how to overcome stagnation, how to set vision and act like the person you want to become, then this video is for you. Let's begin this journey, where every new thought can be the beginning of a completely different life. On a bright Sunday morning at Bright Horizon Community Center, the atmosphere was filled with excitement. More than 100 young people, both men and women aged 25 to 30, gathered in the spacious conference room where natural light shone through large windows. They came to attend a self-development seminar by Professor Ethan Carter, a renowned expert in psychology and human development. As the doors of the conference room opened, all eyes immediately turned towards Professor Ethan Carter. He walked in with a warm smile and a confident yet approachable demeanor, bringing a wave of positive energy that seemed to light up the entire room. His casual shirt and jeans made him look more like a friend than a famous scholar. But it was precisely this simplicity that highlighted the wisdom emanating from his eyes and his calm demeanor. He stepped onto the stage, standing before over 100 young people who had been waiting since early morning. After placing his glass of water on the podium, the professor paused for a moment, scanning the room as if to connect with each person present. Then he smiled, breaking the silence with a warm voice. "Good morning, everyone! It's wonderful to be here today, in a room full of young, talented, and ambitious individuals. Before we begin, I want to say that I am very grateful for you all taking your precious time on this Sunday morning to be here. You could have chosen to stay in bed, stroll around the city, or enjoy a hot cup of coffee at a favorite cafe. But instead, you chose to step into this room to invest in yourselves. That speaks volumes about who you are." Light laughter rose from the audience. A few eyes that had been inattentive were now more focused, as if infused with confidence. The professor continued, his voice warm and inspiring. "You know, just being here today, you've done something that not everyone can do, recognizing your own value and wanting to develop it. I often tell my students that the will to learn and grow is the first and most important step on the journey to conquering success. And I can see that very clearly in you." He moved closer to the edge of the stage, his eyes sweeping across the rows of seats. "You are a generation full of talent and potential. You have grown up in an era where information and technology are at your fingertips, and opportunities are spread out before you. But I also understand that the pressures and challenges you face are not small, from societal and family expectations to the questions you ask yourselves. Who am I? What do I want? Where am I going? Today, we will work together to find ways to answer those questions." He paused for a moment, leaving a brief but meaningful silence. The space seemed to stand still for a moment, then he smiled and said, "Before we dive into the content, I want to share something I always believe in. Each of you has an incredible latent ability. Even if you don't see it right now, I promise you, it's there. And if today, even just one of you leaves this room with the belief that you can achieve something greater, then I will consider this a successful day." Applause rang out across the room, lasting longer than he expected. A few people began to smile more confidently, their eyes brightening as if they had just gained new strength. Ethan Carter raised his hand to signal for silence, then said with a bit of humor, "Thank you all very much. Now let's embark on the journey of discovering how your thoughts are truly connected to your future." The entire audience was filled with anticipation, and Professor Ethan began his sharing with the confidence that, from this moment on, he had completely won the trust and focus of everyone. The professor took a sip of water and began to ask, "How many of you here want to have a wealthy and happy life in the future?" Most people in the room raised their hands, their eyes filled with curiosity. The professor nodded, smiled, and continued, "Good. So, how many of you here have a clear vision of your future? Can you imagine where you'll be, what you'll be doing in 5 or 10 years? This time, only a few hesitant hands were raised. The room became silent, with only the sound of scribbling pens. "Don't worry," the professor said, breaking the solemn atmosphere. "Most people don't have a clear vision. That's why I'm here today, to help you understand that your thoughts are the foundation for everything you want to create in life." The professor began to explain how thoughts affect our reality. He presented a staggering number that stunned the room. Each day, we have around 60 to 70,000 thoughts, and the incredible thing is that 90% of those thoughts are the same as the day before. If you keep thinking the same thoughts, you will make the same choices. The same choices lead to the same behaviors. Those behaviors create the same experiences, and ultimately, the same emotions. A young man sitting in the middle row, named Jake, raised his hand and asked, "Professor, how do we recognize old thoughts when they are almost automatic?" "That's a good question, Jake," the professor replied. "Unconscious thoughts govern 95% of our behavior. But you can start by observing what you think each day. A simple way is to write down the main thoughts that come into your mind. Ask yourself, does this thought bring me closer to the future I want? If the answer is no, you need to replace it with a new, more positive thought." To illustrate, he told a story about Alex, a former student of his. Alex used to be a graphic designer, but he always told himself that he wasn't good enough to start his own business. Those thoughts kept him from taking action. But after attending one of my courses, Alex began to change by repeating an affirmation each day: "I am good enough and deserve success." As a result, Alex not only changed his way of thinking, but also learned new business skills, sought out clients, and within 6 months, he had started his own company. While the room was still immersed in the story, the professor delved deeper into the connection between the brain and behavior. Do you know that our brains are very much like a forest? If you walk the same path every day, the grass will be trampled, creating a familiar trail. But if you decide to take a new path, it will be difficult at first, but eventually, the new path will become the main trail. This is what scientists call neuroplasticity. Jake, still puzzled, continued to ask, "But is it too late to change when we're already 25 or 30 years old?" The professor laughed heartily. "Jake, you don't need to worry. The brain has the ability to change at any age. What you need is perseverance and a clear vision of the future. Imagine you are planting seeds in your garden. If you persistently take care of them, water them, and weed out the grass, you will have a beautiful garden." A girl sitting in the front row, named Sophia, raised her hand and asked, "But Professor, how do I find a vision for myself? I always feel confused and don't know what is truly important to me." The professor gently replied, "Sophia, ask yourself, what excites me when I wake up every morning? Write down the things you want to achieve, no matter how big or small they are. Then imagine you have achieved them. How do you feel? That is where you find your vision. And remember, the vision doesn't need to be perfect from the start. It will become clearer as you move forward." Ethan shared another real-life story to illustrate the power of vision. The Wright brothers didn't know how to build an airplane from the start. They only had a vision: humans can fly. And it was that vision that drove them through hundreds of failures to ultimately change human history. Another young man, Liam, stood up and asked, "Professor, I often start to change but then quickly give up. How can I maintain motivation?" The professor looked deeply into Liam's eyes and said, "Liam, you need a big enough reason. If you change just to escape discomfort, you will easily give up. But if you change because you want to create a more meaningful life, you will have the strength to overcome any challenge. And remember, motivation doesn't fall from the sky. It comes from small victories. So celebrate every step of progress, no matter how small it is." Professor Ethan looked around the conference room, his eyes brimming with energy. After answering Liam's question, he took a step back, lightly clasping his hands in front of his chest, as if preparing to lead the room into a deeper topic. "We have talked about how your current thoughts affect your lives," he said, his voice warm but firm. "Now let's explore how to create a new personal reality, a life you truly desire." He walked over to the whiteboard behind him and wrote 2 words. New reality. To create a new reality, what's the first step? Can anyone guess? He asked, directing his gaze at the room. Some young people murmured quietly. A girl sitting in the second row, named Mia, boldly raised her hand. "It's changing the way we think, right, Professor?" Ethan nodded in satisfaction. "Exactly, Mia. But changing your thoughts is not just about thinking differently. You have to start by clearly recognizing what you are thinking. Many times, we don't realize that most of our thoughts are automatic, even unconscious. Think back. Are there days when you wake up and feel like life is just a series of repetitive events? That's a sign you are living by old, unchanged thoughts." He paused, letting the question sink into everyone's minds. Another young person, named Chris, leaned forward and asked, "But how do we recognize those unconscious thoughts, Professor? They're so quick and automatic." Ethan smiled, pointing to his head. "Chris, recognizing unconscious thoughts requires something simple but not easy: observation. Take a few minutes each day to pause and ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? Do these thoughts help me achieve my goals? If not, replace them with more helpful thoughts. It's a habit, and like any other habit, it takes time to form." He turned back to the whiteboard and wrote, "Change habits. Did you know that most of our behaviors are automatic? You wake up, turn off the alarm with which hand? Go to the bathroom in which order? Drink coffee from the familiar mug? Everything follows a habit. If these habits don't change, your brain won't change either. So, if you want to create a new reality, try starting with small changes. Change the way you start your day, the way you go to work, or even how you deal with difficult situations. These small changes, when maintained, will make a big difference." Another girl, named Rachel, raised her hand. "But Professor, what about the emotions related to the past? What do we do with them?" Ethan nodded, as if he had been waiting for this question. "Rachel, emotions are an important part of us, but not all emotions are necessary for your future. Ask yourself, does this emotion truly serve the life I want to create? If the answer is no, you need to let it go. This doesn't mean denying your emotions, but learning to observe them without letting them control you." He shared a real story about a former student. "I once worked with a woman named Linda. She always carried resentment over a relationship that ended 5 years ago. Linda told me she couldn't move forward because she kept thinking about the old wounds. I advised her to try writing down all these emotions, looking at them as an observer, not as someone experiencing them. When she managed to do that, Linda realized her pain no longer belonged to her present or future. After some time, she began to feel freer and could focus on building a new life." Ethan stepped away from the whiteboard, his eyes sweeping across the room, ensuring he had connected with everyone. "What I want to say is, emotions are not bad. But if they keep you in the past, they will prevent you from stepping into the future." He continued, "Now let's talk about the most important thing, changing your personality to change your reality." The room suddenly became quieter, everyone listening intently. Ethan wrote on the board, "Change yourself. To create a new reality, you must become a different person." This sounds scary, but it's very logical. You see, our brains are a record of the past. Everything you know, everything you have experienced, is stored here. He gently tapped his head, then continued, "If you want to change your life, you can't carry your entire old personality with you. You need to start thinking, acting, and feeling like the person you want to become." A young person in the corner, named Brian, asked, "Professor, how do we become a new person when everything in us is pre-programmed?" Ethan smiled, as if he had been waiting for this question for a long time. "Brian, you don't need to change your entire self immediately. Start by clearly imagining the person you want to become. Then ask yourself, how would that person think? What would they do in difficult situations? How would they treat others? Every day, try to act like that person. At first, it will be uncomfortable, because your body and mind are used to the old ways. But if you persevere, you will realize that the new person has begun to form. Ethan shared another story. I once knew a man named Mark. He always saw himself as a shy person, not good at communication. But Mark wanted to become a leader. I advised him to start by imagining himself as a confident person. In every meeting, Mark would tell himself, I am a leader. I will listen and speak clearly. After just a few months, not only did Mark feel more confident, but his colleagues also started to see him as a true leader. The professor paused, looking around the room. The most important thing I want you to remember is, you can't create a new future by living in your old self. Every new thought, every new action will bring you closer to the reality you desire. The whole room erupted into enthusiastic applause. Ethan smiled, knowing that his words had planted seeds for positive changes in the minds of the young people. Professor Ethan paused, his eyes scanning the room as if to check whether his words had resonated with everyone. The nodding heads, attentive eyes, and the sound of pens scribbling notes told him he was making an impact. With a satisfied smile, he stepped into the center of the room and concluded, learning, vision, and change, these three elements will help you shape a future that you dream of. And the most important thing? Start today. As the session neared its end, the professor asked everyone to close their eyes. Imagine you are living in the future you have always dreamed of. You wake up in the morning, how do you feel? What do you do every day? Where are you and with whom? Feel every detail. The room fell into silence, and when everyone opened their eyes, a radiant light appeared on their faces. Ending the session, the professor reiterated an important point. The best way to predict your future is to create it. And that starts today, from the thoughts you choose to hold in your mind. As Professor Ethan's final words echoed, the conference room erupted in enthusiastic and prolonged applause. Many young people looked at each other with bright eyes, as if they had just received a guiding light for their journey ahead. Some hurriedly jotted down the last lines in their notebooks, afraid of forgetting what they had just learned. The atmosphere was filled with excitement and gratitude, but also a bit of contemplation as everyone realized they were standing before an opportunity to change their lives. People gradually stood up, moving forward to shake hands or take pictures with the professor. A few young people lingered to ask additional questions or share personal thoughts. Professor Ethan, with a friendly smile, listened and talked to each person. In one corner of the room, a group of young people had already started lively discussions about the first steps they would take to apply what they had just learned. The atmosphere was not only dynamic but also filled with a sense of optimism, as if a new journey had officially begun. A week later, many young attendees had begun to apply what they had learned. Jake started writing a journal to record positive thoughts. Sophia found her passion in writing and started a personal blog. Liam enrolled in a course to learn a skill he always feared failing at. And many others. They realized, just as Professor Ethan Carter said, new thoughts lead to new actions, and new actions create a new life. So, we have journeyed together to explore the power of thoughts and how they shape your future. The lessons shared by Professor Ethan Carter are truly thought-provoking. He has helped us realize 4 major lessons. First, your thoughts are the foundation for your personal reality. What you think today will guide your actions, emotions, and shape your life in the future. Second, vision and passion are powerful motivators. To create the life you desire, you need a vision greater than yourself and a passion strong enough to drive you every day. Third, change is not easy, but it is worth it. To achieve things you've never had, you need to step out of your comfort zone, change old thoughts, behaviors, and habits. Fourth, learning and maintaining knowledge. Every time you learn something new, you are creating new connections in your brain. But if you don't practice and apply it, that knowledge will gradually fade. Professor Ethan emphasized, the best way to predict your future is to create it yourself. This is not just advice, but a call to action. Your future starts from the thoughts you choose to keep in your mind today, from the smallest decisions you make. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. We hope that what we shared will inspire you to start changing and acting towards a more meaningful life. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to not miss the upcoming videos.